Okay, Reddit, I'm still shaking. And my husband is currently giving me the silent treatment from the far end of the couch. So I've turned to the anonymous judgment of the internet. I just need to know if I'm the asshole here. Because, right? Now I feel like my entire world has been turned upside down. My baby shower was last Saturday. It was supposed to be one of the happiest, most perfect days of my life. I was the one who ruined it. I was the one who walked out. It all started on a beautiful, sun-drenched morning that gave no hint of the hurricane that was to come. For a day to be perfect, you first have to have survived the imperfect ones. And my husband Tom and I had survived so many of them. Our journey to this baby shower had been a brutal 3-year marathon of heartbreak and hope. It was a journey measured in ovulation test strips, in color-coded calendars, in the cold clinical language of fertility specialists. It was a path paved with hundreds of tiny needles, of hormone injections that turned my body into a landscape, of bruises and my emotions into a raging, unpredictable sea. It was the quiet, gut-wrenching grief of negative pregnancy tests, month after agonizing month. The baby resting under my heart, the one we had finally conceived through our second round of IVF, was not a happy accident. He was a miracle, a tiny, tenacious warrior we had fought for with every ounce of our savings, our sanity, and our love. This baby shower wasn't just a party. It was a finish line. It was a celebration of survival. And I wanted it to be perfect. My sister Chloe and I had spent weeks planning every detail. Our backyard in our quiet, tree-lined suburb of Denver was transformed. We had strung fairy lights and paper lanterns in the branches of the big maple tree. Small bouquets of wildflowers, picked that morning from a local farm, sat in mason jars on every table. A banner, hand-painted by Chloe with the words "Adventure Awaits," hung above a mountain of beautifully wrapped gifts. The Colorado sun was bright but not too hot, the sky a brilliant cloudless blue, with the distant, majestic peaks of the Rockies standing guard on the horizon. It was, by all accounts, a perfect day. Our friends and my family started to arrive. Around noon, the yard filled with the sounds of happy, feminine chatter and laughter. My best friend from college, who had flown in from Portland, was telling an embarrassing story from our sorority days. My aunts were arguing good-naturedly over whose secret family recipe for potato salad was better. My mother, her eyes shining with a quiet, happy pride, just kept fussing over me, making sure I was comfortable in the big, wicker queen's throne we had set up for me in the shade. I sat there, my hand resting on the firm, round globe of my pregnant belly, and I felt a sense of profound, overwhelming gratitude. Every person here had been a soldier in our long war. They had been the ones who had answered our tearful late-night phone calls, the ones who had dropped off meals after my egg retrieval surgery, the ones who had never stopped telling us to keep the faith. This party was as much for them as it was for me. The only cloud on my perfect, sunny horizon was the impending arrival of my mother-in-law, Diana. "Okay, deep breaths," Chloe whispered, leaning down to hand me a glass of sparkling cider. "The storm is forecast to make landfall in approximately 10 minutes. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh. "Be nice. She's my husband's mother." "She is a Category 5 narcissist, Sarah," Chloe said, her voice a low, dramatic hiss. "I'm just saying. I've put a $50 bet with your cousin Amy that Diana somehow makes your baby shower about her new kitchen renovation." "That's a sucker's bet," I sighed. "You know she'll find a way." It was a joke, but it was born from a deep, frustrating truth. Diana possessed a unique, almost magical ability to warp the gravitational field of any social event, until she was its son. At my and Tom's engagement party, she had given a toast that had somehow turned into a 20-minute monologue about her own whirlwind romance with Tom's father. At my own sister's wedding, she had worn a dress that was a shade of cream so pale it was almost, but not quite, white. Last Christmas, she had insisted we all go around the dinner table and say what we were most grateful for, and then had filibustered for a full half hour about the spiritual awakening she'd had during a recent yoga retreat in Sedona. She wasn't a bad person. Not really. She was just pathologically self-involved. Well, I said, taking a sip of my cider. Today is different. Today is about her first grandchild, her only grandchild. Surely even she can't make this one about her. The hope in my own voice sounded thin and naive, even to me. At precisely 1 o'clock, she arrived. Tom's father, a quiet, kind man who had long ago learned that his role was to be a silent, supporting actor in the one-woman show of his wife's life, trailed behind her, his arms full of extravagantly wrapped gifts. Diana herself was a vision in a flowing, floral print dress that was just a little too formal, a little too eye-catching for a casual backyard party. She was also carrying a large, expensive-looking leather tote bag that seemed oddly out of place. "Sarah, darling," she trilled, air-kissing the space beside my cheeks. "You're simply glowing. It's that Vargas family fertility, I tell you. Once it kicks in, there's no stopping it." She patted my stomach as if she were the one who had created its contents. She surveyed the decorations, her eyes sweeping over the paper lanterns and wildflower bouquets. "Oh, this is all just so charming," she said, her voice full of a bright, manufactured enthusiasm. "So wonderfully rustic and homespun. You and Chloe must have worked so hard." In her world, rustic and homespun were not compliments. They were polite code for cheap. She moved through the party, a whirlwind of performative charm, greeting the guests she knew with loud theatrical hugs. I watched her, a small familiar knot of dread beginning to tighten in my stomach. She was holding court, her voice just a little too loud, her laughter just a little too sharp. I saw her reach into her large tote bag and discreetly hand a small, glossy pamphlet to one of Tom's aunts. What was that about? I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the joy, on my friends, on the perfect sunny day. For the next hour, I almost succeeded. We played the silly games Chloe had organized. We ate the delicious food my mother had prepared. The pile of gifts grew into a small, pastel-colored mountain. And for a while, Diana was just another guest. Another happy, smiling face in the crowd. I allowed myself to relax. I allowed myself to believe that today my hope had not been misplaced. Today was my day. The time came to open the gifts. I sat in my wicker throne, Chloe beside me acting as the designated record keeper. The gifts were beautiful, thoughtful, and overwhelming. Tiny little shoes, soft hand-knitted blankets, books. I remembered from my own childhood. With each one, my heart felt a little fuller. Diana had, of course, positioned herself directly opposite me, ensuring she was in the sight line of anyone who looked at me. When it came time to open her gift, she made a small production of it, insisting Tom's father bring the enormous, perfectly wrapped box to me. Inside was a ridiculously expensive high-tech stroller system that probably had a more advanced GPS than my car. It was a generous gift, an extravagant gift. And I knew its primary purpose was to publicly demonstrate her own generosity. "Oh, Diana, it's too much," I said, genuinely flustered. "Nonsense, darling," she said, beaming at the impressed faces of the other guests. "Only the best for my grandbaby." I finished opening the last of the gifts, the yard-a-sea of discarded wrapping paper and happy smiles. My heart was overflowing. It was perfect. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. I had survived the battle, and this was my victory parade. I leaned back in my chair, a happy, contented sigh escaping my lips. And that was when I saw it, the glint in Diana's eye, small, triumphant smile. She was looking at the captive audience of 50 friends and family members, all gathered together, all focused on our family. And she saw her opening, the storm. I realized with a sudden sickening lurch had not been averted. It had just been waiting for the perfect moment to make landfall. I'm sitting here on my couch, and it's a little after 9 on Monday night. Tom is still giving me the silent treatment. The air in our house is thick, with a tension that feels exactly like the silence that fell just after the gift opening. On Saturday, for that moment, the party was a symphony of warmth and happiness. I was sitting in my wicker throne, surrounded by a mountain of soft, adorable evidence that this baby, my baby, was already so loved. My friend Amy was passing around the handmade blanket my grandmother had knitted, and a chorus of oohs and ahs followed it around the circle of my dearest friends. For the first time in 3 long, painful years, I felt my shoulders unclench. I felt safe. I felt celebrated. And that, I now realize, is the exact moment a narcissist knows it is time to strike. Clink, clink, the sound, a sharp, piercing chime of a silver knife tapping against a crystal champagne flute, cut through the happy chatter like a shard of glass. Every conversation stopped. Every head in our 50-person party turned towards the source of the sound. My mother-in-law Diana was standing by the main table, a beatific smile on her face. Her glass held high. If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment. She called out, her voice full of a theatrical, practiced warmth. I felt a small, reflexive tightening in my stomach, the familiar brace-for-impact clench I always felt when Diana took center stage. But I pushed it down. This is a toast, I told myself, a toast to her first grandchild. It will be sweet. She wouldn't dare ruin this day. I arranged my face into an expression of warm, appreciative expectation. Beside me, I saw Chloe, my sister, narrow her eyes with a look of deep suspicion. She knew her enemy. "Thank you all so much for coming," Diana began, her eyes sweeping across her captive audience. "It is so wonderful to see all these beautiful faces, all gathered here to celebrate such a joyous occasion." She smiled in my direction, a brief, cursory nod. "To see my dear son, Tom, and his lovely wife, Sarah, on the cusp of this great new adventure. It is truly a blessing." So far, so good. It was a little generic, a little focused on her experience of our adventure, but it was within the bounds of normal grandmotherly behavior. I chanced to glance at Tom, who was standing near the barbecue. He looked proud, happy. He caught my eye and gave me a small, loving wink. "And you know," Diana continued, her voice taking on a new, more profound tone, seeing all of this. New life, all of this incredible potential just waiting to burst forth. She gestured vaguely at my stomach. "It has been a source of great inspiration for me. It has made me realize that it is never too late to give birth to something new yourself. To start your own new chapter of empowerment, of wellness, of purpose." A few of the guests exchanged confused, polite glances. The toast was taking a strange, self-referential turn. My own smile began to feel stiff, plastered on. Where was she going with this? For months now, she said, her voice dropping as if sharing a deep, personal secret. I have been on a journey of my own, a journey of transformation. And I realized that it would be a disservice, a true act of selfishness, to keep this life-changing discovery to myself. And what better occasion than this, a day already so full of joy and new beginnings, to share my own incredible news with all of you, the people I love the most. This was no longer a toast. A toast is about the person you were toasting. This was an announcement. I felt a cold dread begin to seep into my veins. Chloe shot me a look from across the circle of chairs, her eyes wide with a silent, horrified, "I told you so." Tom was no longer smiling. A look of deep, pained uneasiness had replaced his happy pride. He looked like a man who was watching a slow-motion car crash unfold and had forgotten where the brakes were. Diana took a deep, dramatic breath, her eyes shining with an almost manic fervor. She held her champagne flute out as if it were an Olympic torch. "I am so thrilled, so proud, and so humbled," she declared, her voice ringing across the silent, stunned yard, "to finally announce that I am the newest regional founding director for an incredible, revolutionary, and authentically transformative new wellness lifestyle brand, a company called Elysian Bloom." The name landed in the silence of my baby shower with the thud of a dropped encyclopedia. Elysian Bloom. It sounded like a new, expensive strain of weed. A wave of stunned, awkward silence washed over the guests. People blinked. They looked at each other, then at me, their faces a mixture of confusion and second-hand embarrassment. This was not the kind of news anyone had been expecting. Was this a joke? But Diana was not joking. She was beaming, her face alight with the passion of the newly converted, completely oblivious to the social atom bomb she had just detonated. "Elysian Bloom is more than just a company," she continued, her voice now taking on the slick, practiced cadence of a sales pitch. "It's a movement. It is a curated collection of artisanal, organic, sustainably sourced essential oils, nutritional supplements, and proprietary wellness technologies designed to help you unlock your body's true, authentic potential." My mind was reeling. My mother-in-law, a woman whose idea of wellness was a second glass of Chardonnay at lunch, was now a health guru. And she was using my baby shower, the celebration of my hard-won pregnancy, as the stage for her new pyramid scheme. The polite, weak applause that trickled through the crowd was a sound of pure social agony. I looked at Tom, my eyes screaming at him across the yard. "Do something! Say something! Stop her!" But he just stood there, frozen, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He looked like a man who was desperately trying to become invisible. He wouldn't even meet my gaze. His inaction was a betrayal so profound it felt like a physical blow. I turned my gaze to my own family. My mother looked horrified, her hand over her mouth. My father looked like he wanted the earth to open up and swallow him whole. And Chloe was staring at Diana with a look of such pure, unadulterated rage that I was genuinely afraid she was about to throw a diaper cake at her head. The scene was a nightmare. I was the guest of honor at my own party, but I had become a captive audience member at a marketing seminar. The beautiful, joyful atmosphere we had worked so hard to create had been shattered, replaced by a thick, suffocating blanket of awkwardness. The gifts at my feet, the symbols of love and support for my unborn son. were now just props in the background of Diana's one-woman show. She was still talking, her voice full of buzzwords like synergy, self-actualization, and income. Opportunity? I wasn't really listening anymore. I was just staring at my husband. At the man who had held me while I cried after every failed IVF treatment. The man who had promised to be my partner, my protector. And he was just standing there, doing nothing. Letting his mother bulldoze the most precious day of my life. The announcement was over. The hijacking was about to begin. Diana, beaming as if she had just announced the cure for a major disease, was now gesturing towards the main table. And I knew with a sudden, sick certainty what was in the large, expensive leather tote bag she had brought. The party was not going to recover from this. The perfect day was officially, irrevocably over. And the blame did not just lie with her, it lay with him, my silent, complicit husband. The cold, hard reality of that fact was a pain far sharper than any needle I had ever endured. I'm sitting on my couch now, and the house is so quiet I can hear the hum of the refrigerator. It's Monday night. The party was 2 days ago, but I can still feel the hot, prickling shame of it on my skin. If Diana had just stopped with her bizarre, self-centered announcement, it would have been bad enough. It would have been a story my sister and I would have told with horrified laughter for years to come. But she didn't stop. The announcement wasn't the main event. It was just the opening act. The real horror, the full-scale hijacking of my life's happiest day was about to begin. As the last of the week, confused applause died down. Diana beamed at her captive audience, her face glowing with a missionary zeal. I know. It's a lot to take in, she said, laughing as if she had just shared a charming family anecdote instead of a business proposition. But I can see the excitement, the curiosity in all of your eyes. I can assure you, the only thing in the eyes of my guests was a mixture of deep, uncomfortable pity for me and a frantic, panicked search for the nearest exit. And because you are all my nearest and dearest, she continued, turning towards the house. I couldn't just tell you about this incredible opportunity. I had to let you experience it. She strode over to the large, expensive leather tote bag she had, left by the gift table. It was the bag I had noticed earlier, the one that had seemed so out of place. Now I understood. It was her war chest. She unzipped it and, with the flourish of a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, she produced a collapsible 3-foot-tall pop-up banner. With a single practiced flick of her wrist, it sprang to life. There, in shimmering gold and lavender script, were the words Elysian Bloom. Floating above a picture of a serene, unnaturally beautiful woman meditating in a field of purple flowers. She propped the banner up right next to my wicker throne, right beside the mountain of gifts for my unborn son. The smiling, airbrushed face of the Elysian Bloom woman was now staring down at the hand-knitted blankets and tiny baby shoes. A corporate ghoul haunting a nursery. The physical intrusion, the sheer audacity of planting her business's flag in the middle of my celebration. So shocking it took my breath away. But she was just getting started. Tom, darling, be a dear and help me with these, she called. Out, my husband, startled into action, numbly walked over as his mother began pulling product after product from her Mary Poppins bag of horrors. He became her unwilling, silent accomplice, his face a mask of pained resignation as he helped her transform the main food table, the one laden with my mother's carefully prepared food, into a makeshift trade show booth. She pushed aside the platter of mini quiches to make room for a display of small amber-colored bottles. The bowl of fruit salad was unceremoniously shoved to the side to accommodate a stack of glossy lavender-scented brochures. She had tubs of green powder, sleekly packaged wellness supplements, and a whole collection of what she called proprietary vibrational crystal diffusers. Within 5 minutes, my beautiful homespun baby shower had been transformed into a seminar for a multi-level marketing scheme. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, she said, picking up a small bottle of oil and holding it. To the light, you're thinking, Diana, is this one of those pyramid things? She laughed, a sound that was meant to be reassuring but was brittle with condescension. Let me assure you, Elysian Bloom is a multi-level marketing opportunity which is completely different. It's about female empowerment. It's about building your own business, being your own boss, and sharing the gift of authentic wellness with the people you love. She was now in full-on pitch mode, her voice taking on the slick, rapid-fire cadence of a home shopping network host. She moved around the yard, a predator stalking her prey, approaching small groups of my stunned and horrified guests. I watched as if in a dream, as she cornered my two best friends from college by the drink station. Ladies, you are both so vibrant, so full of life, she chirped, uncapping a small bottle. This is our Radiant Energy Citrus Blend. Just a dab on the wrist, and it helps to focus your intentions for the day. She practically forced them to sample the oil. With your social networks, you wouldn't just be customers. He would be incredible wellness ambassadors. Imagine the financial freedom. You could be making a 6-figure income within a year. All it takes is a small investment in one of our Business Builder starter kits. My friends, both successful lawyers, just stared at her, their faces frozen in polite, horrified smiles, before making an excuse about needing to use the restroom and practically running into the house. I looked for Tom. My eyes scanned the yard, desperately searching for my husband, my partner, my protector. And I found him. He was on the far side of the yard by the barbecue, which had long since been turned off. He was pretending to be intensely, fascinatingly absorbed in the task of scraping the grill with a wire brush. He was a man in full-blown catastrophic conflict avoidance mode. He was a statue of inaction. I tried to catch his eye, to send a desperate, silent, telepathic scream for help. But he would not look at me. He just kept his head down, focused on the imaginary grease on his grill. A man hiding from a house fire by pretending to be intensely interested in a spot on the carpet. The final, soul-crushing humiliation came from my own sweet elderly gratante, Harriet. She was a kind, gentle woman who was clearly confused by the turn of events. She saw Diana's display of products and, trying to be supportive, she asked, "Oh, Diana, this all looks very nice. Do you have anything that's good for a baby's skin?" Diana's eyes lit up. She had found her ultimate marketing pivot. "Harriet, what an excellent question." She boomed, her voice carrying across the yard. "Of course we do. In fact, I am going to make sure my grandbaby is an Elysian Bloom baby from day one." She picked up a bottle of lavender-scented mist. "This is our Angel Slumber Calming Spray. It's 100% organic, ethically sourced, and it promotes healthy sleep cycle development in infants. It's the perfect chemical-free way to ensure a peaceful night for both mother and child." And there it was. She had done it. She had taken my unborn child, the miracle I had fought and cried and bled for, and she had turned him into a sales prop, a talking point, a way to shill her snake oil to a captive audience of my friends and family. That was the moment the hurt died. The embarrassment, the frustration, the shock, it all burned away. And in its place was a feeling of pure, cold, and wonderfully liberating clarity. I saw my entire relationship with this woman, with this family, laid out before me. All. The years I had spent biting my tongue, making myself smaller, accommodating her ego, all in the name of keeping the peace. And I realized that peace had been a one-sided truce. I had been the only one honoring it. I looked at the disaster zone that was once my perfect day. I looked at my guests, who were now huddled in small, awkward groups, trying to make their escape. I looked at Diana, a shark in a floral dress, utterly consumed by her own reflection. And then I took one last, long look at my husband. He was still at the grill, scraping at nothing. And I knew with an absolute and final certainty that I could not count on him to save me. If I wanted to be saved, I would have to save myself. I placed my hands on the firm, round curve of my belly, on the small, innocent life that I was responsible for protecting. The instinct to protect him from this toxic, ridiculous world was a fierce, primal thing. The time for being a polite, accommodating, and silent victim was over. My son deserved a mother who was a warrior. And her first battle was about to begin. It's late on Monday night, and I'm sitting here in the dark, replaying the moment. This is the part I need you to judge. Reddit. This is the moment I took a match to my own life. I look back now, and I can see the scene so clearly. Diana, holding a little bottle of her Angel Slumber calming mist, had just turned my unborn son into a marketing demographic. And in that instant, a profound and liberating shift happened inside me. The years of quiet accommodation, of biting my tongue, of making myself smaller to appease her enormous ego, all of it just burned away. The humiliation was so total, so absolute, that it became a kind of armor. I was no longer a participant in her drama. I was an observer. And I knew with a certainty that felt like it was coming from the very core of my being that I would not spend one more second sitting in that wicker throne and smiling politely. The performance was over. The babble of the party, the awkward, forced questions. A few guests were asking Diana about her business. It all faded into a low, distant hum. My world became a small, intensely focused point of light. I placed my hands on the arms of my chair. My movements were slow, deliberate, not the jerky motions of an angry person, but the smooth, measured actions of someone who knew exactly what they were going to do next. I pushed myself up. The simple act of me standing, of my 7 months pregnant, body rising from the celebratory throne, had an immediate and profound effect. It was a break in the script. It was an unplanned movement. Diana's sales pitch, which had been flowing with a practiced, oily smoothness, faltered and then stopped. Mid-sentence. Every conversation in the yard, every polite, whispered aside, just died. 50 heads turned in my direction. The silence that fell was absolute, broken only by the cheerful, oblivious chirping of birds in the maple tree. I had become the center of gravity again. I placed a hand on my belly, a gesture that was both protective and powerful. Silent reminder to everyone present of what this day was supposed to be about. I looked around the circle of faces, my friends, my family, and then I spoke. My voice did not tremble. It did not rise in anger. It was calm, clear, and loud enough for everyone, from my great aunt in the front row to my husband cowering by the grill in the back, to hear every single word. I just want to take a moment, I began, my eyes moving over the faces of the people I loved, to thank all of you, my wonderful friends and family, for coming today to celebrate our baby. I paused, letting the words sink in, letting the original purpose of the gathering reassert itself in the space. Your love and your support on our very long journey to get here. It means more to me and to Tom than you will ever know. Seeing you all here today is the true gift. It was the speech of a gracious hostess. It was polite. It was normal. I could feel the tension in the yard lessen slightly. People smiled, relieved. They thought I was just gracefully moving the party along, steering it back on course after. My mother-in-law's bizarre detour. Then I turned my head slightly and looked directly at Diana. My smile was small, polite, and utterly devoid of warmth. And I also want to thank Diana, I said, my voice still perfectly even, for sharing her exciting new business venture with all of us. It has been very informative. The pause I left before the word exciting, the slight, almost imperceptible emphasis I put on it, was a perfectly aimed dart. I saw it hit her. Her beaming saleswoman's smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. The guests shifted, the awkwardness flooding back into the yard tenfold. They knew now that this was not a recovery. This was a counterattack. I swept my gaze back over my guests. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and suddenly very tired, I said, and this part, at least, was true. So I'm going to go inside and rest for a little while. I gave them all a final, warm, and genuine smile. But please, don't let me stop the party. Enjoy the food, enjoy the beautiful day, and please, I looked back towards Diana. One last time, my expression a perfect mask of polite consideration. Enjoy the rest of Diana's presentation. And then I turned and walked away. The walk from my wicker throne to the sliding glass door of my house was the longest 10 yards of my life. I could feel the 50 pairs of eyes on my back. I felt like an actress on a stage, performing the most important exit of her career. I kept my back straight. My steps were not rushed. They were the deliberate, unhurried steps of a woman who was in complete and total control. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the faces. I saw Chloe, my sister, looking at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated, awestruck pride. I saw my mother, her face a mixture of horror at my breach of etiquette and a dawning, fierce approval. I saw the guests, their mouths slightly. Agape looking back and forth between me and the Vargas family, as if watching a high-stakes tennis match, and I saw them. I saw Carmen and Alina, their faces pale with shock, their mouths clamped shut in a way that suggested they had finally, for the first time in their lives, run out of snide remarks. I saw Diana, her beaming mask completely shattered, her face a picture of stunned, furious disbelief. She looked like a general whose supposedly loyal troops had just turned and marched off the battlefield in the middle of her victory speech. And I saw Tom. As I drew level with the barbecue, I glanced at him. He was no longer looking at the grill. He was staring at me, his face a tragic, helpless mess of confusion and shame. He looked like a little boy who had just watched his house burn down and knew, on some level, that he was the one who had been playing with the matches. Our eyes met. For a single devastating second, I gave him nothing. No anger, no plea, no forgiveness. I simply looked at him, and then I looked away. I reached the sliding glass door. My hand was perfectly steady as I took the handle. I did not look back. I slid the door open, stepped into the cool, quiet sanctuary of my own home, and then I slid. The door shut. The soft, definitive click of the latch was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a boundary being drawn. It was the sound of a prison door being locked. But with the monster on the outside, I stood there for a long moment in the silence of my living room, my back pressed against the cool glass. I could see the party through the reflection, a distorted, silent pantomime of social chaos. My walkout, my quiet, polite, and utterly devastating act of rebellion had been a grenade, and I had just pulled the pin. I did not know what the fallout would be. I did not know if my marriage had just ended. I did not know anything about what the future held. But as I stood there, alone in my quiet house, a single overwhelming feeling washed over me. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was a profound, exhilarating, and completely unfamiliar sense of my own power. My performance was over. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely and utterly free. So that's what I did. I walked out. I'm sitting here on my couch in the dark. The whole house is silent except for the low hum of the dishwasher. And I'm replaying that moment, the click of the door, over and over. This is the part where my husband Tom thinks I went too far. The part that has landed him on the couch for the past 2 nights. This is the part where I need to know if I'm the asshole. But to judge that, you have to know what happened next. For a few moments, I just stood there, my back pressed against the cool glass of the sliding door, my hands protectively on my belly. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against the sudden, shocking silence of my living room. I could see the scene outside through the sheer curtains, a distorted, surreal pantomime. I saw my mother-in-law, Diana, her sales pitch cut short, standing with a half-unpacked starter kit in her hands, her face a mask of frozen, indignant shock. I saw the guests, all 50 of them, in various states of social paralysis. No one knew what to do. The joyful, celebratory atmosphere of my party had evaporated, replaced by a thick, suffocating fog of pure awkwardness. And then the exodus began. It was a slow, agonizing trickle at first. One of my college friends suddenly remembered a fictional, urgent appointment she had to get to. An aunt of Tom's developed a sudden, violent migraine. Soon, it was a flood. People were practically running for the exit, murmuring polite, hasty goodbyes to a flustered and ignored Diana, their eyes darting everywhere except at her ridiculous pop-up banner. They would give a quick, sympathetic wave in the direction of the house, towards me, before scurrying to their cars. My quiet act of rebellion had been a social nuke. I had not just ended the party. I had vaporized it. The first person to come inside was not my husband. It was my sister. Chloe slid the door open quietly and closed it behind her. Her face was a glorious, beautiful mixture of rage and pure, unadulterated awe. Oh my God! She breathed, her eyes wide. You are my absolute hero. I have been waiting my entire life to see someone do that to that woman. She pulled me into a fierce hug. Are you okay? I think so, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I couldn't sit there for one more second. I couldn't let her turn our baby into a brand ambassador for her stupid pyramid scheme. She's a monster, Chloe said, her voice low and furious. A perfectly dressed, lavender-scented energy vampire of a monster. She looked out the window, and Tom. God, Sarah, he's still out there. He's just rearranging the chip bowl. The whole world is on fire, and he's worried about the dip. We watched as the last of the guests fled. Finally, it was just the family. My in-laws packed up Diana's Elysian bloom paraphernalia in a stony, furious silence. Diana didn't even look at the house. She just got in their car, and they drove away without so much as a goodbye. And still, Tom stayed. Outside, a lonely, pathetic figure in the wreckage of the party, a man who didn't know which direction to run. When he finally came inside, the sun had begun to set. He walked in and looked at me, his face a mixture of exhaustion, resentment, and a deep, wounded confusion. I had braced myself for this moment. This was the real confrontation. He didn't start with an apology. He didn't ask if I was okay. He started with a complaint. Well, he said, his voice heavy with sighs. That was a complete and utter disaster. My mother just called me. She's hysterical. She said you embarrassed her in front of all of our friends and family. She's threatening not to come to the hospital when the baby is born. I just stared at him, my heart turning into a small, cold stone in my chest. Even now, after all, of that, his first concern was for her feelings. My mother was embarrassed. I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Your mother commandeered her pregnant daughter-in-law's baby shower? A party celebrating a baby that we almost went broke and lost our minds trying to have, and she turned it into a business launch for her multi-level marketing scheme. And you think she was the one who was embarrassed? Okay, he said, putting his hands up in a placating gesture. She was out of line. I know. But you know how she is, Sarah. She just gets carried away with these new projects of hers. You can't take it personally. It's not about you. It was my baby shower, Tom. I finally snapped, my voice rising. It was by definition about me. And about our son. And your mother made it about her, just like she makes everything about her. And you just stood there and let her. What was I supposed to do? He asked, his voice rising to match mine. The classic defense of a man who has done nothing. Get into a huge screaming match with my own mother in the middle of a party. Ruin the whole day. The day was already ruined. I cried, a wave of pure, frustrated grief washing over me. The moment she pulled out that ridiculous banner, it was over. I looked at you, Tom. I was begging you with my eyes to step in, to say anything. To just say, hey, Mom, maybe not right now. That's all it would have taken. But you couldn't even do that. You hid behind the barbecue grill. You left me completely alone. The accusation hung in the air between us, stark and undeniable. He had the grace to look ashamed. He slumped down onto the armchair opposite me, his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he mumbled into his palms. I freeze. She's been like that my whole life. It's easier to just let the hurricane pass. I'm not a hurricane, Tom, I said, my voice softening now, the anger giving way to a deep, sad clarity. I'm your wife. And in a few months, I am going to be the mother of your child. And what I saw on Saturday was not a man who was ready to be a father. I saw a little boy who was still terrified of his own mommy. He looked up, his eyes full of a pained, wounded look. That's not fair. No, I said, it's not. But it's the truth. And the truth is that the problem isn't your mother anymore. The problem is you. The problem is that I am about to bring a child into this world. And I do not know if his father will ever be able to stand up for his own family against your mother. He was silent, a deep, shuddering sigh escaping him. So what do you want from me, Sarah? He whispered. What do you want me to do? This was it. The question that would determine the rest of our lives. I took a deep breath. I want a husband, I said, my voice clear and steady. I want a partner. I need to know, without a single shred of doubt, that I am your priority, that this baby is your priority, that our family is your first loyalty. I need you to establish real, firm, and permanent boundaries with your mother. And you need to be the one to enforce them. You need to be the one to tell her that her behavior on Saturday was unacceptable and that it will never happen again. I need to know that you are on my team, Tom, not a neutral observer, not a referee, on my team. I stood up, my body aching with a weariness that was bone deep. In a few months, we are going to be parents, I said, looking down at him. And you need to decide if you are ready to be a husband and a father first, and a son second. Because I cannot, and I will not, bring our son into a world where his own mother is constantly being made to feel small and unimportant in her own home. I left him sitting there, the full weight of my ultimatum settling on him. I went into our bedroom and closed the door. So that's where we are now. It's Monday night. He has been sleeping on the couch since Saturday, wrapped in a cloud of sullen, resentful silence. He is waiting for me to apologize for embarrassing his mother and for ruining my own party. He thinks I was the one who made the scene, but I think I did the only thing I could do. I think I finally stood up for myself, for my baby, and for the family I am trying to build. But I have to know so. Reddit, tell me. Am I the asshole for walking out of my own baby shower and giving my husband that ultimatum? So, here I am. It's Monday night, a little after 9, and the house is quiet. Tom is not on the couch. He's upstairs, in our room, asleep. The silent war lasted for 2 more days. 2 days of him sleeping on the couch, of us moving around. Each other in the kitchen like ghosts, the air thick with unspoken words and the heavy weight of my ultimatum. I spent those days in a state of terrified resolve. I had thrown a grenade into the heart of my marriage, and I did not know if there would be anything left to salvage. I spent my time methodically washing and folding the tiny baby clothes we had received. Each tiny sock a prayer for the future I so desperately wanted. A future that was now entirely in question. I was prepared for him to choose his mother. I was prepared to be a single mom. I was not prepared for what actually happened on Tuesday night. He came into the nursery where I was putting the final touches on the mural I had been painting on the wall. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood in the doorway, watching me. He looked exhausted. He looked broken. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of all its usual easygoing charm. "You were right," he said. I stopped painting but did not turn to look at him. I'd been sitting on that couch for 2 days, feeling sorry for myself. He continued, his voice cracking slightly, "Feeling angry at you for making a scene." And then I started thinking. I started replaying that day in my head, and then I replayed my whole life. My mom announcing my college choice for me at a family dinner. Her telling my ex-girlfriend that her dress was inappropriate in front of me. Her redecorating our first apartment as a surprise while we were on our honeymoon. He let out a short, bitter laugh. I've spent my entire life just letting the hurricane pass, like I said, but you were right. You're my wife. And I just stood there while you were being swept away. He finally walked into the room and stood beside me. He looked at the half-finished mural of mountains and stars. "I was a coward, Sarah," he whispered. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry that I was not the husband you deserved in that moment. But I want to be. God, I want to be. I finally turned to look at him. His eyes were full of a genuine, heartbreaking remorse. The defensive, resentful son was gone. In his place was a man who was finally, painfully, looking at the truth. I love you, he said, and I love this baby, and I will not let my mother's issues poison our family before it even begins. You tell me what I have to do, I'll do it. And so we talked. For hours. We talked more honestly than we had in our entire relationship. I told him about the years of quiet slights, the constant feeling of being a satellite to his mother's son. And he told me about the lifetime of being conditioned to please her, to avoid her disapproval at all costs. It was not an excuse, but it was an explanation. For the first time, we were not on opposite sides. We were a team tackling our first major problem as parents do. We decided together that he had to be the one to speak to her. He had to be the one to draw the line. He went to his parents' house the next afternoon. He went alone. I stayed home, my stomach a churning knot of anxiety. This was the real test. He told me the whole story when he got back. He had walked into his parents' living room to find Diana on the phone with one of her new Elysian Bloom recruits, a notebook in her lap. She had ended the call and had looked at him, her expression one of frosty expectation. Well, she had said, I assume you are here to tell me that your wife has come to her senses and is ready to apologize for the appalling way she behaved. And then Tom, my quiet, conflict-avoidant Tom, had taken a deep breath and become the man I had always hoped he was. No, Mom, he had said, his voice calm and firm. I'm here to tell you that you owe Sarah an apology. And I am here to tell you that the way our family operates is going to change, starting right now. He told me his mother had looked at him as if he had sprouted a second head. He laid it all out for her. He told her that he loved her, but that Sarah and their baby were his primary family now, and that his first and most important loyalty would always be to them. He told her that her behavior at the shower was unacceptable, a profound act of disrespect to his wife, and that he was ashamed that he had stood by and let it happen. Diana had apparently launched into her usual tactics. First, the tears. Was just so excited about my new venture. I wanted to share my joy. How can you be so cruel to your own mother? Then, the emotional blackmail. This is her, isn't it? She's turned you against me. I knew she would try to tear our family apart, but this time Tom had not backed down. He did not yell. He did not argue. He just held his ground. This is not about Sarah, he had told her. This is about me. This is about me becoming a husband and a father. And the new rule is this: our family events, our birthdays, our holidays, our children's lives are not your business opportunities. They are not your stage. You are welcome in our lives as a grandmother and as my mother. But if you ever pull a stunt like that again, we will leave immediately. There will be no discussion. We will just leave. Those are the boundaries. I need you to agree that you understand and will respect them. He told me she had just stared at him, speechless, for a full minute. The fury in her eyes slowly being replaced by a look of shocked, dawning realization. The rules of the game had just been fundamentally, irrevocably changed. And her star player had just walked off her team and onto mine. She had finally, after 32 years, lost control of her son. When Tom came home to me that evening, he looked exhausted, but he also looked taller. He wrapped his arms around me and buried his face in my hair. I did it, he whispered. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm so proud of you, I whispered back, my own tears finally falling. They were not tears of sadness or anger. They were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. So that's where we are. That's the end of the story. I'm sitting here now finishing this post, and Tom is asleep in our bed upstairs. His mother has not spoken to him since their conversation. The silence is cold and angry, I'm sure, but it is a silence on the other side of a new, strong wall that her son has built to protect us. It will take time. But for the first time, I am hopeful. We are a team. The real team. Our son, Jacob, was born 2 months ago. He is healthy and beautiful and perfect. And Tom is the most incredible, protective, and devoted father I have ever seen. The man who was afraid of his own mother is not afraid of anything when it comes to his son. So, Reddit, I guess I have my answer. Maybe I was an asshole for the way I did it. Maybe walking out was a dramatic nuclear option. But it was the only thing I could do to wake my husband up. To force him to become the man, the partner, and the father I knew he could be. I did what I had to do to protect my new family. And I am not sorry.